And welcome back to another episode of our podcast series where we'll be talking about everything innovation, entrepreneurship as it relates to apparel and textile. Joining me today is Kireety Madiraju. He is the Director of Innovation at MAS Active, and he has over 23 years in the apparel and textile manufacturing space. And so we're here to learn more about his insights and where he thinks the future of fashion and apparel is going. So thank you so much for joining us, Kireety.
My pleasure.
So Kireety, tell me, as the Director of Innovation, what does innovation mean to you?
Let me put it in a simplified manner. It's about elevating the product and the experience of the users from what they used to. So in sportswear terms, it's about helping the athlete, the consumer, perform better without any distractions and able to achieve his objective of getting fitter, leading a more healthy, happy, comfortable life.
So what kind of innovations have your team brought to the athleisure athletic space?
So in the last, I would say 23 years that I've been in the industry, you've seen people who are wearing a lot of loose-fitted, heavier product. If you've seen the Olympic races to what they're wearing now, it's almost it's almost second skin. It's almost, there is no bagginess holding you back. So there's a lot of aerodynamics brought into the product. So we work closely with the brands and we bring them lighter, better performing, faster drying materials and construction techniques that help their athletes perform better. So in sportswear world, it can be measured. It's in fact, some products are so good that they get banned because they give undue advantage to the athletes who are wearing it. I don't know if you've heard of the fast skin suits for swimmers. Most of the gold medals went to the athletes who were using them, and then FINA had to ban them because they were getting undue advantage. So that's what true innovation in sportswear space can do. Whereas in the athleisure space, it's mostly about the user experience, the comfort. And you can't really measure it. The only way to measure it is through your sales growth and the consumer feedback you see at different forums.
Is that what drives your innovation, sort of the consumer feedback and sales?
Absolutely. So if you're creating a product which doesn't meet or satisfy the undermet or the unmet need of the consumers, those products are not aimed at anyone. So we always base our concepts, ideas on what the consumers are looking for in terms of pain points, in terms of solves. Then you know who you are serving. Then you know whether your product is living up to those expectations or not.
So in your earlier answer, you touched upon something really interesting. You described it as a purpose-driven innovation outlook. Is that how you interpret what you do every day?
Absolutely. So I think some of the parameters for innovation are kind of given in terms of you have to make the product perform better, lighter, faster in terms of its sweat evaporation, odor, resistance, etc. In addition to that, we ensure that all the aspects of raw materials and manufacturing is sustainable and low impact. What we mean by that is we ensure we select which raw materials which are from a renewable base, which can be recycled, which are bio-based, which would be biodegradable at end of use, and also the manufacturing processes which are low impact, which uses less energy, less residue left at the end of the process. Because as you know, this industry is one of the top polluters globally. So we want to change that. And we believe the way to change that is to ensure our every new product we bring to the market is more sustainable than its previous version. So that ways we ensure that that's our contribution to the planet and to the customers we work with.
Is this method of innovation ever In contrast, it's purpose-driven innovation based on consumer needs and unmet needs. And then we're trying at the same time to provide more sustainable, becoming better than the previous generation. Do those things go hand in hand, or are they kind of competing against one another?
I would say previously they were more focused about the performance attributes. Most of the brands over the last 5-6 years have realized the importance of ensuring that their products are low impact and more sustainable. And this pandemic has accelerated that. The consumers are aware now the impact of their actions, and they've seen how more and more waste is generated by these non-recyclable masks that are thrown everywhere. They're found deep in the oceans, etc. So consumers are aware, and now they're demanding from the brands to ensure that the products they make are sustainable, low impact, and not causing enough harm to the environment.
So, what does a fully sustainable garment look like to you?
For me, it is a product that comes from a recycled or a recyclable source. At the end of its life, it can go back and come back into life either as another product or another upcycled product. So in the industry, it's called circularity. And most brands today have goals towards getting there. Some have goals for 2025, and some have publicly declared that they want to be a circular brand by 2030, etc.
Do you think solving the circularity is the most sustainable option available to us?
Given the functionality of the products expected, I feel that would be the right way. The ideal way is to make sure if all the products are made from bio-based, plant-based stuff, but they do have certain limitations. You can't swim with it, you can't, because they tend to retain a lot of water. So keeping the functional aspects of the products, I believe circularity would be the way forward until we come up with new to world solutions which don't need any of these fossil fuel based raw materials.
Okay. So bio-based materials would be the ultimate sort of sustainable solution.
Yeah, in the immediate future, in the near future.
But in terms of what you're doing in the athleisure and the fully athletic space to enhance performance, what are the sustainable solutions that you've been able to bring to market?
So you must be aware of the ocean plastic products we do, where we collect the plastic that ends up in the oceans around the island. We collect those, convert those into chips, extrude it into yarn, and then you make synthetic sportswear that otherwise would have been made from fossil fuel. Whereas you're now converted a waste into a high-performance sportswear product. And also we are actively looking for alternatives for some of the synthetics we currently use from bio-based. They're available, it's just that they're right now in limited supply and at a very high cost. So our objective is to partner with both the manufacturers and our customers to create enough scale so that they become affordable and they become mainstream. So that's what we're working towards.
So you mentioned that the pandemic had caused a lot of consumers to sort of rethink what they were buying and what it was made out of. How has the pandemic affected us as a manufacturer and the maker of such of these products?
No, I mean, it has impacted the whole world. I think that's quite obvious, right? So before the pandemic, I mean, all of us experienced, we had an office attire, office wear, work wear, whatever you call it. Then when you were going out in the evening to catch up with friends, then you have a casual wear. Then whenever you're working out, you have a workout wear. So and then you kind of, at home, you wore sleepwear or lounge wear, whatever. So you every week, people had 4 different types of clothing they had. Now, this pandemic combined all of them into people got up in the morning in whatever they were sleeping in, and as long as waist and above they were looking good, they were taking their Zoom calls, etc. And there was no going out, so there is no casual wear required. They're not going to work, so there's no work wear required. And that in lounge, stay-at-home clothing became their workout wear as well. So it has combined four different clothing segments into one. Now, this for people who manufacture athleisure saw it as an opportunity, and people who do the other categories of product still haven't recovered, right? Because woven trousers, suiting, tie industry, they're all going through.
the formal wear.
Absolutely, they are impacted majorly. So, how it has impacted the workout athleisure? Previously, there was a little bit of a segregation that you focused on quick drying, faster, lighter materials for real workout, and athleisure is all about comfort. So those two categories merged as well. So now the idea is you create a product in which you should be able to take a Zoom call, means waist above, you should look decent enough. Then that same product you should be able to do workout at home, because that is another major trend. I think the pandemic has made people more aware that if you're a healthier person, the impact of the virus is very low on you. So it created awareness that staying healthy is more important now than before. So they're working out a lot more. So hence, your clothing should be able to support whatever workout that people are doing at home, mostly app-based indoor workouts where you follow the app and do the process, or you have stationary bikes at home that you use. Your clothing should be able to take in that workout, keep you comfortable, and ensure that you don't, the odor is managed, means antimicrobial, anti-odor finishes, etc. So our focus is creating more and more capsules of these products that the consumers would love to be in throughout the day. Stay comfortable, work in it, work out in it, and also spend the rest of your day in it. So that is how it has impacted. It has helped a lot of athleisure brands take off. And as we discussed, some of the formal wear brands are still struggling out there.
So would this new hybridized product be still classified as athleisure, or are we calling it something? Is this a new category that we've invented?
Yeah, I know it's a new category, but I think people still call it like active lifestyle athleisure product. It is evolving, and people initially didn't have a way to access it other than online. Stores were closed. You must have seen all the brands online. Sales have gone up by 100%, 80%, 90%. That's because the physical stores are closed. What we feel is there would be a hybrid model that will emerge at the end of it. The convenience of online shopping would stay when you are buying a repeat purchase. But the first product experience, you can't replace that touch and feel, that sensory experience. So we feel that there would be a hybrid model where the new products are experienced in the stores. The stores also have to reinvent their model. It's not about focused on selling products so much in the store. It's about giving an experience to the consumer, and then making sure that the convenience of online purchase is used for the repeat sales, etc. That's how we see. And what that means from a product innovation perspective is you also have to have innovation or concepts that are visual, because when you're looking at the product online, if it's a plain product, you can't see anything. Whereas you have certain visual graphics, visual technology, that dots, etc., which gives you the feeling that it'll keep you cooler or warmer, etc. It's become more important now to attract your consumer through the digital media. Whereas beautiful products, which has amazing touch, etc., would struggle to sell online without a consumer really experiencing it. Hence, we feel that this hybrid model would be the way forward, and we ensure that all the concepts we offer both have the visual aspect as well as the sensory aspect once they.
Right. So you see sort of this in this post-pandemic, well, we hope 3 to 5 years, like pandemic life, you think the focus will be on design-driven innovation? Because primarily most of us will still be interacting and purchasing digitally, and there still might not be as much interaction with the physical world, such as a mall or a larger retail space.
So I would say the first and foremost is going to be comfort, I think, because people are going to spend a lot of time in these products. Comfort is the first factor, and then to create some sort of a newness, an aspirational aspect, then the design elements would come into play to make sure that you look amazing while feeling great.
So let's talk about this, because I don't know if everyone who's watching this will understand what a design innovation really means. What does a design innovation mean to you?
So it's about creating an aesthetically appealing concept, right? So you can just have a plain black legging, or you can bring in elements of certain transparent zones by incorporating some mesh, some beautiful lace art into it. It does two things. One is it creates an amazing visual, and also functionally, those areas are breathable, those areas don't retain sweat.
So you mentioned that during the pandemic, that a lot more emphasis going forward would be faced on sort of design and function. Are there any other post-pandemic trends, or how are we continuing on?
So as I mentioned, one of the big trend is people are a lot more health conscious. They want to get fitter, they want to stay healthier, increase their immunity level, so that they know that would help them face the pandemic. And also another aspect that we are seeing a lot of brands waking up to is inclusivity in terms of the size range, right? So most of the brands currently are not catering to a sizable market which is outside of XL. So we are seeing now lots and lots of brands bringing in extended size range to serve these consumers who were not served before for various reasons, and also certain smaller sizes. With now world becoming a melting pot, you have different ethnicities with different body types, sizes, which brands are now starting to address. In addition to that, empowering people. So empowering people comes in various forms. One aspect that we are looking at is empowering women through various stages of life, be it underwear aimed at managing the menstruation period, also urinary incontinence, which women experience during different stages of their life, just after pregnancy, etc. And also clothing requirements for menopausal women, where they experience hot flashes, etc. So we want to address and empower these aspects for our consumers. So products which would absorb a lot of discharge without leaving any stains, without leaving any odor. That's an important aspect. And also giving that cooling sensation to a person who is going through the menopausal phase. These elements would empower that person to lead a regular life. And we see more and more products addressing maternity, managing that entire process from clothes that needs to grow and accommodate to also nursing mothers, etc. So various products that will help them do this without too much of inconvenience, changing too many clothes, etc. So
you touched on many interesting points right there, but let's take a moment to sort of deconstruct what you said about size, in terms of size inclusivity and brands now offering a more diverse range of sizing options available to you, you being the end consumer. So I was reading the other day that the average American woman is about a size 16. So it's shifted from a 12. So how are we as a manufacturer helping brands along this journey to be more size and body positive and be more inclusive in terms of sizing?
Initially, I remember an instance where the base size was a small. We all know how, I mean, that's a very small representation of the addressable market size. So we've seen, I think there's a lot of, with the social media, there's a lot of information that the brands receive that there is an addressable size out there which is not being served. So initially, it was about just scaling the product into a larger pattern, etc. So we support the brands by working with them in understanding how these sizes are scaling. Not necessarily they just grow in all directions.
Right. It's
So
not about just making everything larger.
everything larger or longer. So it's about the right ratio. So it doesn't mean that if it's larger in one direction, it also has to be. So those are the aspects that we collaboratively work with the fit experts at the brands, and then help them. They have the information to the fit sizes. They're collecting real-time data from their consumers, and they're refining what this size is for the larger consumer segment. So yeah, we work with them in bringing those fits to life, and yeah, help them in this design and development process.
I know we're able to rapidly prototype different size and different.
Yeah, so previously prototyping was all about making a physical sample, whereas now there are tools which is a 3D prototyping, where you really don't need to make a physical product. You can create your raw materials digitally, you can cut them, you can stitch them, and you can fit them on a virtual avatar, and then see how the product is fitting, make the adjustments before you make a real sample. So in this process, we save a lot of time, we save a lot of material, and save a lot of back and forth couriering time and cost. Whereas we just create a digital prototype, share it with the customer for their feedback, check and adjust, and create the first physical sample, which is almost 95%, how do I say, 95% in line with the expectation of the customer.
You also touched on another interesting point, which is you use the word empowerment. And since we live in a world where 99% of the time we are forced into clothing and have to have a textile or a garment on our body, that clothing should feel more empowering. And are we doing anything, or are we offering anything to make this a more empowering experience every time you wear clothes?
So, you know how the evolution happened, right? So clothing initially was a way to protect yourself from the elements. Then it was a fundamental need. Beyond that, it's all about, it's a non-verbal way of expressing your identity, right? What you stand for, what your interests are, etc. So we empower the consumer through ensuring that their aspirations are met. So people who are working out and then immediately going to meet a social gathering, they don't want any that workout odor coming through. So we come up with technologies that would prevent that odor from growing. So there are antibacterial yarns and coatings that we apply that will give them that comfort. And then sweat stains, right? So they're not desirable. You don't look very, how do I say, attractive with all those patches. So clothing that would quickly transport the sweat from your body into the outside environment. So that would minimize the sweat patches. That would be another way to empower the consumer. And also managing through various health conditions they might have. We spoke about the underwear which manages discharges, etc. And also clothing for differently abled. So we are working with brands in creating some concepts which would be easier for a disabled person to use it. Easy on, easy off. Certain special closures for them to get into it easily and take off. So these are some of the concepts that we take to our customers and see if they're interested in taking these to the market.
So you talked about how we're developing a new line of adaptive clothing aimed at people with disabilities or people with limited mobility to make sure that they have the sort of flexibility to wear any garment they chose and give them the empowerment of a range and a variety of clothing that they might not already have.
Absolutely. So the idea is to create a product that a regular athlete wears for the differently abled athletes. So they would look the same, but then they have those special closures, etc., which makes it easier for them to get into and get out of it, and also helps them perform at the same rate as the regularly abled athlete.
And is this something we've been able to sort of fast track with our rapid prototyping and our ecosystem behind MAS?
Absolutely. So I think we can test some of these hypotheses very, very quickly by using the digital tools to see if something is workable or not. And also with the MAS ecosystem, we have access to some of the Paralympic athletes. And then we use their feedback in fine-tuning the concepts before taking them to our customers. Some of our customers are very open. They do their own research. They do have their own ambassadors in this space. So it becomes easier to take these to certain brands. Certain brands are still figuring this space out. So they are working with us in understanding this space a little better.
So in your mind, what does a truly inclusive garment look like?
So for me, it look exactly the same as the product line that is made for the regular market, but it should have those hidden features which will help the differently abled use it a lot more comfortably. There are lots of new examples of how certain shoes that you can just step on it without using you can just step into the shoes. So those are some of the examples of how the products are made simpler and easier for these athletes to use. So our endeavor is to make apparel as simple, as easy as it is for a regular person to use, for the differently able to experience it.
So we've seen this a lot with sort of the LGBTQI community. Do you still see moving forward that when we experience shopping in a physical or digital platform, it would be based and be segregated on gender?
So you see new trends emerging. There are capsule collections. Some of the mainstream labels are launching, which are gender neutral products. So it is not identified as a men's or a women's product. So it just goes as a gender neutral product. Even the fit, it doesn't have any of those body contouring, etc. So we see that all the brands would be having a range of these products to address that community requirement. Yeah.
What trends do you see emerging in your personal opinion?
Yeah, so in my personal opinion, some of these new trends which are going to stay post-pandemic are the health-conscious consumer. I think now they've realized staying healthy helps them face these pandemics better, and an overall better life experience. I think I see that continuing. People would be mindful about what they consume, not just from what they eat, but also what they buy. I believe they would be more conscious about what they buy, how much they buy. Previously, a lot of trend-based fast fashion used to be their go-to solve. But I believe now more quality, more durable, more sustainable products would prevail. And I also feel that there would be a hybrid model emerging. I think people are sick and tired of sitting at home looking at the Zoom screen. They're raring to go out and experience the real world. So I believe there would be a hybrid model where you would still walk into the malls, the stores, to experience the product, but purchase might happen. Your research would happen online, and then when you go experience the product physically, then your repeat purchases would again happen online. So I believe the brands would wake up to this trend and create more experiential brick and mortar stores, while digital would be where the purchase takes place.
So, as the director of innovation, how would you describe what innovation is?
Interesting. Okay, so I would bucket innovations into three categories, right? So the first category is an incremental improvement to an existing product. So an example of this would be the current phone evolution, right? So you would see a version of the phone which for the next year launch, it becomes faster, it becomes with more data
More
capacity,
megapixels in the camera?
so that we call it as an incremental innovation. The next bucket of innovation is sustaining innovation, means you address that need, but with a different product. Like previously, people used to carry a phone and a physical camera, like those Nikons, the Fujis, etc. Whereas the need here was to capture the moment. Whereas now you address that need by integrating that camera into the phone. So the need is addressed, but it is integrated and through bringing in a new aspect to the existing product. And the third one category is where companies die is the disruptive innovation, where a new product comes and would just kill the existing category of product. So here you could think of how again the phone world has killed so many other product categories that existed before, because all of them came together into one device which is so portable and which everybody would carry. So we apply the same methodology in apparel innovation. So how do you improve an existing product from a user perspective, from an aesthetic appearance for the next season? In the second category, how would you change a major aspect in that, maybe a raw material, maybe some of the construction techniques we used to give the same experience, but overall the product is transformed. In disruptive, you bring in new to market categories. These products did not exist before, but you bring in materials, products with adaptive features, means yarns that open and close, that would sense your body temperature and automatically adjust. So we have a lot of IP in this space. We expected the market to be using that at this point in time, but I guess with the pandemic, etc., we see there is smart clothing coming, but we believe there is still a long journey for it to be adapted by the mass market.
Why do you think that smart clothing hasn't been as accepted in the marketplace by consumers?
I guess today's consumers are overwhelmed with the number of gadgets they have, the number of devices they need to charge. You need to charge your phone, you need to charge your watch, your laptops, your now even your earphones.
AirPods,
yeah. So imagine charging a piece of clothing again, right? I guess it's a lot. And also the electronic industry hasn't thought about the pliability, the washing requirements of apparel and the ruggedness of apparel. Because most of the electronics, you can't take them anywhere close to water, take them anywhere, you can't drop them, you can't sit on them, whereas clothing goes through a lot of that rigor. So we believe there are few unlocks that are needed in that space for it to become mainstream. So right now we are in the early stages of the personal computer world, in like maybe the 70s, similar stage in the wearable smart clothing at this point in time. So there are a lot of unlocks that are needed for it to become mainstream. And also it needs to address a real problem, because monitoring, sensing, heart rate, etc., right now it's done by the smartwatches or the phones or handheld devices, whereas clothing really needs to bring that solve, which cannot be done by any other devices. And I believe personally that would be the unlock that would take this mainstream. So this is a simple example I have, right? You have aging parents at home, right? You put them in a piece of clothing that if they have some sort of abnormal heartbeat or something, it would alert you and you would be able to react rather than not knowing what's happening. Or if they had a fall, that would alert an SOS to near and dear so that somebody can come and take care of them. So those are the solves I believe would accelerate the acceptance of the smart clothing by the wider market.
So we need to solve, like clothing as an industry needs to solve for more unique problems.
Absolutely.
So let's take a step back and let's talk about your history with MAS. You've done a few roles with our company. Which role did you find the most challenging and why?
Challenging, I guess, all of them, and I don't think, how do I say, I enjoyed all the roles I've had. I came into this industry not by default. I loved two things growing up: sport and fashion. And there weren't any courses back then for me to study in sports. I wasn't good enough to play any sport at the highest level. I was good, okay, average. So the only thing I could then do was textiles. And in the textile space, I was fascinated by the knitting machine. It looked like a spacecraft with lights glowing all over it. And yeah, it came quite natural to me. I picked that up and I worked in a fabric mill for 6 years. That gave me the understanding of how a textile is made. But I was always curious about what the designers were trying to do. And because they did not understand the technical limitations, I used to come up with concepts that are closer to their design intent. So that connect and that thought process got me into what I'm doing right now. I try to understand what is the designer's intent, what are they trying to solve, and how our current technology today can solve that requirement. So in all the 5 different roles I've had at MAS for the last 16 and a half years, I've just used that basic philosophy of, what are they trying to achieve and how we can solve it with the technology we have in the organization or in our ecosystem.
So it sounds like you went from like design, performance, and function, and now you find yourself the director of innovations for MAS Active. How did that pivot happen?
Very, very interesting. So as you know, 650 to 70% of everything we make is it's a raw material which contributes to all the aspects of it. And I came from that background. So for me, it's quite easy to understand the performance of a product, and I could see how that could be incrementally improved. So I was, in my previous roles, I was doing that, though it was not my assigned area of work. I guess the organization saw that and they thought, yeah, you would be an ideal candidate to lead the innovation effort, because the one aspect they were looking at was curiosity and a person who's interested in trying out various things and not too worried about failures, etc. So I guess that got me into this role. And yeah, the leaders who managed me saw that element, which honestly I didn't see that I didn't know that I was doing it in a structured way.
You wouldn't have described yourself as curious.
Curiosity, yes, but I didn't know that quality alone would have gotten me into this. I think it's the combination of trying out things, being open to suggestions, be open-minded about combining different materials to see if they work together or not to solve a need. Yeah.
In your career with MAS, have you been a mentor? And
yes, in fact, I've had a lot of mentors in the last 16 years. Now, what I do is I pick the best of what worked for me, and then I use those with the people I'm mentoring right now. I like the way I was mentored. They asked me what I want to improve, etc., and they also got feedback from my peers, superiors, and subordinates as to what could be some of the areas that I would benefit by improving. So I apply the same logic with the people I'm mentoring, helping them achieve what they want to achieve, and also help them improve in the areas that their peers, subordinates, and colleagues they would benefit by improving.
You mentioned that you take a very holistic approach to your mentorship. You have wisdom that you'd like to instill, things that you've learned along the way from your mentors, and you also ask your mentees what they want to learn and how they want to grow and develop. Is this the same approach you use to keep your team inspired?
Absolutely. So we have a very open conversation. We brainstorm a lot. We think together, we share ideas, we discuss what is the best solve for a particular project we are working on. It doesn't matter where it comes from, the years of experience, etc. Doesn't matter. It's the idea that matters, and it's the solves that they bring to the table that matter. So, and we encourage that. We encourage open communication, being encourage them to share their ideas, and encourage them to experiment a lot. Try a lot of things, because that experience would help you then create a database for you to see what worked, what didn't work, and what could be an ideal solution for a future requirement.
This practice of sort of trying and failing and experimenting, how have you personally been able to integrate that into your team's sort of daily life at work?
It's about encouraging them to try a lot of ideas, hypotheses, and not being too critical when things don't work out. So that encourages them. They know that it's okay, that not everything that we're going to try is going to work. As long as we are making progress, as long as we in the right direction and using the learnings from those failures in improving the existing product process, I think that keeps us moving forward.
How would you describe your management style?
A very informal, very, how do I say, open. You could walk into my office anytime, open door, and very collaborative. I appreciate brainstorming about any idea project and being very open and receptive to the feedback that you get from your team, from your peers, from your supervisors, and take it in the positive spirit. All feedback is good, and use it to improve yourself and others. Share the same with you.
So all feedback is good feedback.
Absolutely.
So let us transition now into talking about, since we are in the business of apparel, and we have talked at length about what it means to have a good textile on you and the future of clothing. Let's talk about what you've chosen to wear today.
So this may look like a woven shirt that people have been using it for hundreds of years, but it's not. This is actually a knitted PK fabric that was used initially in tennis sportswear, and now people use these really comfortable, stretchable materials to make formal-looking clothing. So it is super stretchy. I could do whatever workout with this, at the same time looking reasonably formal. And that is how we see the evolution of clothing. Comfort first, and then making sure that the aesthetic aspirations are met. Now we are working from anywhere, right? Office few days, home few days, and in different locations. So you should be able to manage all those tasks with what you're wearing.
So now you think in the future clothing will be it's not occasion-based anymore?
I guess there are few things like weddings. I guess we don't think people would get married in a yoga pant in the near future. But some are influenced by tradition. But most other activities, we used to wear ties to work. Probably up to 2017, all of us used to wear ties to work. I personally enjoyed it because I guess it felt nice that you could try out different pieces of clothing. Whereas now we've evolved into wearing more comfortable, more appropriate clothing for this weather and the type of product, work environment we operate in.
One final question we would like to know the answer and pick your brain to. It's that in your expertise with your background in apparel and textile, is there a problem in the fashion industry and this apparel space that we work in that you see is a really big hindrance and something you want to sort of solve for moving forward?
Sure. So we spoke about how our industry is not the most sustainable in terms of its impact on the environment. So for us to make the products more circular, more recyclable, One of the biggest unlocks we need is the solve for a recyclable spandex or lycra or whatever, because almost all the sportswear and athleisure products for women and any next to skin product has a percentage of spandex that is used in it, which makes that entire product currently not recyclable.
Yes.
So we want to find a solve. There are some solves, they come to a certain degree to solve, but they're still not ideal. So I think once we find a solve for that, a lot of organizations are working on it, and we are collaborating with them in finding a solve for that. We feel that clothing would become truly circular once we find a solve for this, a sustainable, biodegradable, recyclable spandex.
You think the future will always have a form of lycra and spandex in our clothing? It's not going back to like a single source?
It was invented for a reason, right? So before, it was invented in 1960s. Before that, you didn't have a really next to skin fitted form clothing, right? It was all because you need to have closures opening. Whereas once spandex was invented, you could really wear clothing almost like your second skin. And because of its elasticity, recovery, it's really difficult to separate it once it is set into the fabric. That feature is desirable. That is always going to stay for comfort aspect, that stretch and recovery. But lots of organizations are trying to work around it without using spandex to achieve that mechanical stretch and recovery. So let's hope we succeed in that endeavor and make the product truly recyclable.
All right, so closing the circularity.
Yeah, that would be a big solve.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Kireety, and thank you for so much of the wisdom and insights that you've shared with us based on your long career in the apparel industry. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope it really inspires some of the people who are listening to this. Thank you.
Thank you.